From KPFK in Los Angeles, California, Valley Free Radio in Florence, Massachusetts, WNUC in Detroit, and BikeTalk.org worldwide, this is Bike Talk.
Bike Talk.
Welcome to Bike Talk. I'm Taylor Nichols.
I'm Nick Richard.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, Taylor.
You know, a couple weeks ago, we talked about my colonoscopy, and you said, how old do you think people are who listen to our show? And, you know, we really didn't have a good answer for that. So we came up with a Bike Talk listener survey, and we're going to put it on our website and on our huge social media outreach machine and get some feedback from who is listening to our show and what they think of it and what they like and what they don't like and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, so it's at biketalk.org?
It's at biketalk.org. It's a short survey. It's only like 5 minutes long. And it really just asks what kind of biker are you, you know, and do you like to commute and have you had a colonoscopy? It doesn't ask that.
I thought we were past the colonoscopy discussion.
But we will put that on our social media and on our website. And I encourage you to go. It is very short, and it's kind of fun. And it'll really give us some valuable information about what's clicking and what's working with the show and who's listening to it and what kind of stories you are responding to.
All right. There is a new validation. This is an old point that's been made in Scientific American about bikes being the most efficient form of transportation.
Humans on bikes.
Humans on bikes are the most efficient form of transportation.
Yeah. Humans walking is like, way down the list. And, birds are much higher and all that kind of stuff. But humans on a bicycle are right up there with sea otters and things like that really just sail through the water. And even better, it said in the study, Nick, than humans on bicycles are humans on those bicycles that are called velomobiles that are encased in plastic so they zip through the air.
A velomobile that zips through the air? Oh,
yeah, you've seen them before. I mean, it's just a regular bicycle, but it's encased in plastic, so it is much more aerodynamic.
Oh, wow.
Because the author said, what is not great about humans on bicycles are the human parts, because they block so much wind. When you kind of sit up on your bike, you're blocking a lot of wind. And that's why the velomobile was even more efficient than just a human on a bike.
Cool. Good to know. And that's in Scientific American?
Yep. And I think that's something that you and I know and that we talk about a lot. It's more efficient to go to the grocery store on the bike than it is in the car.
You would think that if it's the most efficient form of travel, not just the most efficient form of human travel,
right?
But in the animal kingdom, then we would make it easier to get places by bike.
Right. That we would prioritize humans on bicycles.
You would think, right?
Instead of killing them, yeah.
Okay, well, you want some more news? Here's some news from Charlie.
Let's play that.
Hey, it's Charlie here with the week's news. The League of American Bicyclists recently came out with their Bike Advocacy Toolkit. From their website, it's a, quote, comprehensive digital resource designed to help advocates plan, organize, and execute effective community groups and campaigns for safer, more inclusive streets, end quote. It's free for volunteer advocates, $20 for nonprofits, and $50 for professional use. Calbike is forming a working group called the California Independent Electric Mobility Council to, quote, bring order and vision to the fast-changing landscape of e-bikes and other small electric mobility devices so that they can be safely and fairly integrated into California's networks of streets, bikeways, and shared use paths, end quote. The group will be active for the next 9 months and feature a diverse makeup of council members. Calbike will also have a communications campaign to help spread information about e-bikes and other small electric mobility devices. In response to Trump wanting to send the National Guard to Portland, there was an emergency naked bike ride on October 12th, which ended at the Portland Ice Building. And, as we all know, naked bike rides are just a staple of war-ravaged areas.
Right. Yeah, naked bike rides. We actually spoke with an author and journalist, Stephen Hunt, last August 2nd, 2024, and did a whole interview on the World Naked Bike Ride. And, one of the things Stephen Hunt said is that naked protests have been around for a long time as a way of fighting against the man and the powers that be. And the bicycle is just a new way of updating the naked protest.
Because clothing is oppressive. It's just one of the things that are oppressive. Well, didn't Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, call Portland the naked bike ride the most threatening thing he's ever seen? That's a quote.
He also called it very ugly, which, I thought maybe that's a little body shaming in there from old Mike Johnson.
I mean, it's weird to call it, hundreds of people who are naked an ugly thing.
It's also crazy to call it, a negative thing. I mean, it's really a wonderful form of protest, although I've never done it.
Well, on Jimmy Kimmel, they had a song about this. This made the Jimmy Kimmel show. You want to hear that?
Let's hear that.
Protesters in Portland called an emergency naked bike ride this weekend to protest the president's attempt to send federal troops to their city.
Large inflatable frogs have become a common sight at anti-ICE demonstrations there.
And now a response from the leader of the frog resistance.
And why do they have to hide? You can spray us with pepper, but we won't surrender. We'll respond with a naked bike ride. So march through our city, we'll stand up to fascists, the chicken, the T-Rex, and me.
So we have Kermit on our side. If one side has Kermit and the other side doesn't have Kermit, I mean,
we win.
They have Pepe the Frog, though.
Yeah. I think Miss Piggy would be on our side. I think all the Muppets, Cookie Monster would totally be on our side. I love that song, the Rainbow Connection. So thank you, Jimmy Kimmel.
Now we got, speaking of protests, a very important protest being done by a group called Cycling Solidarity in Chicago. I reached out. I didn't know who it was. It turned out to be our own Captain Jack Sharrow from Blue Sky and elsewhere, Rick Rosales. Rick is here.
Hey, Rick.
Hey.
Yeah. I'm one of the members of the team, of the organizers of Cycling in Solidarity. Yeah.
Is it safe in Chicago now? What's going on? Are there hordes of gangsters on the street? What's Chicago like?
Yeah, and they're masked and they don't identify themselves and they're kidnapping people. So yeah, no, it's not safe.
Wow, it's not safe there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of why we're protesting. So our neighbors aren't getting kidnapped at school drop-off and from their work sites and whatnot.
Yeah. So you've been doing critical mass, which is a protest, right? Right.
Yeah, definitely.
And then how about the formation of Cycling Solidarity? How'd that happen?
Yeah. So, well, the group started kind of during COVID, and it was just a mutual aid community, bring bike groups together, all that great stuff we love about cycling. And that's what we've been doing for the past few years. We picked up Burrito Brigade Chicago, which is a wonderful organization. We deliver burritos for them on bikes, 250 burritos. We deliver, they make 500-600. We have an unemployment support group. We do bonfire rides. And then most recently, we've kicked off this kind of mutual aid ride in response to ICE and the terror they're inflicting on our communities.
Wow.
And what do you do?
So we, one of our organizers had this wonderful idea of raising money in that mutual aid format that we love and learned during COVID. And so we're raising money and then we ride around and we buy out vendors, meaning we buy all the product they have. And then we turn around and ride around and pass it out similar to what we do with Burrito Brigade. So we stop by shelters, encampments, folks on the street, and it's just like a beautiful cycle of community. No
Wow.
pun intended.
How many people show up? Tell me what the group is.
It varies. So Saturday it was Sunday morning, 7 a.m. It's pouring rain. 3 of us are out there riding up and down the street, buying vendors out. So that's, it could be 2 people, it could be 3, it could be 10, but it varies depending on when we ride out.
Hey, Nick, we had Desmadre on, who was a Los Angeles protester who did the same thing. He did a
Amazing
vendor buyout in LA.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing. It's not some kind of revolutionary idea. People have been doing it for years, and so I love it as a component of these ICE raids that we're seeing. And so we've had it where people would buy out vendors in the winter here in Chicago, so they could go home and be warm. So yeah, this is just another iteration, and the outpouring of support we've gotten recently has been wonderful. And so it's just become a part of Chicago now. Communities with street vendors, you're talking about LA, like they cherish them. They are family in those neighborhoods. So it's not surprising that people have such strong feelings about protecting them and keeping them safe.
Right. Supporting them, I think, is the great thing. And I love it when we do it on bikes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes we're loading 4 or 5 dozen tamales into our bikes, and sometimes the chicharrones, so the pork rind chips, come in giant bags that are the size of adults, and we throw those on the back of the cargo bike. So yeah, it can get pretty wild.
Are you looking for support?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Instagram has a link to an interest form. So if you want to contribute funds, if you're local to Chicago and want to volunteer, we look for Spanish translation. 100% of the vendors that we've worked with have been monolingual in Spanish, so that's sometimes a challenge. But yeah, we welcome any and all support.
Halloween's coming up, and you go to Critical Mass, and that's coming up.
Yes.
Is Critical Mass on Halloween?
It is. It is going to be very exciting. Yeah.
Are you going to have the skeleton on the bike?
Oh, of course. Yeah. He's been with me pretty much every month, but yeah, obviously October is his time to shine. So yeah, we'll be out there for sure.
All right. Cool.
Well, that's a great note, Nick. I'm glad you brought that up, because Critical Mass is the last Friday of every month. And it's, not just in Chicago and Los Angeles, it's all over the country, and indeed all over the world, really.
Yeah, exactly.
And to have it on Halloween, it's going to be a really fun night.
Chicago is in the news, and you're holding it down in Chicago with Cycling Solidarity, so we want to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't leave without highlighting the other beautiful communities in Chicago that are coming together in different ways to protest. And we've got folks on the corners of schools looking out at drop off and pick up. I mean, we got people holding Know Your Rights trainings. There's just pick one of the 77 communities in Chicago, and there's a group that's coming together to protect their neighbors. So I'm really proud of my city, and I'm proud of what we're doing as cyclists, but it takes all of us.
That's awesome.
Well, thanks very much, Rick Rosales, Captain Jack Sharrow.
Great to talk to you guys again.
Yeah. Desmadre's interview about the vendor buyout in LA was in episode 2528, if people want to go back and check out that.
Cool.
Well, that was great. And I think Halloween's going to be a blast at night to ride around, whatever city you live in. So better than driving a car.
That's a great way to trick or treat.
Absolutely. Last week, we had Diane Alisa, and she spoke with Melissa Bruntlett. And of course, Melissa is a well-known author, half of the Bruntlett team that has written Curbing Traffic and Changing Cities. And of course, Diane Alisa wrote A Love Letter to Suburbia. But now Lucy Maloney joins the conversation. And Lucy, as you remember, is the city council person from Vancouver, Canada. And she's going to speak with Melissa a little bit about issues in her new book, Women Changing Cities.
All right.
It's so interesting because I only moved to Vancouver about 8 years ago, and I remember hearing about the Bruntletts and their work, and I started following in your footsteps of the work that you were doing. it ended up that I was asked to run for council and was recently elected. But I'm so excited to have you visiting Vancouver this week for the launch of your new book. This is the first time I've actually spoken to you, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in real life this week, probably in a couple of days. So fantastic to meet you, Melissa, and congratulations on your new book.
Thank you very much, Lucy, and congratulations on your election.
Yeah, I certainly probably even a year and a half ago wouldn't have expected to be in this position, but I'm really thrilled that I can contribute in this way. And I'm so excited to hear about your new book, which I understand is focusing on how cities can be best designed and built to help serve the needs of women, and details about how that's absolutely not the case in a lot of North American cities and Australian cities. I'm originally from Australia. So can you give us an overview of what your new book's about?
Yeah, absolutely. So truth be told, after we finished Curbing Traffic, Chris and I said, that's it, no more books. Writing a book is a definite labor of love. It's Chris likens it to gestating a child. I would argue it's not the same, but that's a man-woman perspective, so we'll take it as that. But we had said, no, that's it, we're done. And then because of where our careers were going, we were seeing a lot more of the world around us, seeing many more global cities. And we started to notice a pattern that the cities that were moving along faster were the ones that had women in roles of leadership, whether that's at the civic level or at NGOs, or just local advocacy. And we started to ask, well, why is that? What is making places like Barcelona and Paris and Montreal move ahead so quickly? What is that magic ingredient? And it seemed to be women. And so we're like, I wonder if there's a thesis question here. And lo and behold, that led to another book. But it was an opportunity to both have a story, but also the images behind it, because a lot of the work we do online is to tell stories through photo, through video. And so be able to merge that together with our writing this time around was a real opportunity that we jumped at. And that is what the book is this look at cities that have been transforming, where you see this leadership done by women. What happened in those cities in terms of the changes that were happening and why. And a lot of that looks at things like the impact on women. And we sort of sum it up in terms of answering that first question. What were the magic ingredients to make this happen? Spoiler alert, they're not necessarily women-only characteristics. Men are very capable, and there are actually a lot of men around the world that are exhibiting similar traits and having similar impact. But for us, it was, that was the point of the book, is to shine a light on the women that are making this happen. In as much as not just telling their story, but also helping other women and other people around the world understand that there is not one type of person that can lead our cities and one type of characteristic that can be successful, but rather, we can all have these more empathetic and feminine traits that think about the people that we're impacting. Think about kids, for example, like we were talking about earlier, and the role they have in the city, and our responsibility as those that are making decisions and designing to cater to all those needs.
And did you look much at what the particular needs of women as users of a city, as residents of a city? What are the things that help women, the aspects of city design that help women to live their lives more easily and conveniently?
First and foremost, and we talked about this in Curbing Traffic as well in our Feminist City chapter, is the role of care in our daily lives. We talk a lot about where care work fits in. So for those listening that don't know what care work is, those are all the tasks that we do in a day that are not economically driven. They're not part of our job. We don't get paid for them. It's things like caring for children and elderly family members. It's, running errands, doing groceries. They're essential. They're the foundation of how we live every day, and we could not function without it. But unfortunately, a lot of cities are so focused on the economic trips, the getting to work, and what's driving the GDP, that they forget about the role of care. And so the key aspect in every city that we've looked at is understanding, how are we supporting the people that are caring for us in terms of, facilitating transportation, facilitating good spaces to move through and to stay. And we know that because women still do the large chunk of care work in our cities, thinking about that as the core premise for design and possible changes has been integral. And then from there, it's all the things that we all want to do. They're not inherently women only characteristics or women only activities, but having those social spaces outside. In Barcelona, creating those super blocks to help provide outdoor space in a city that has cramped, tiny apartments, so they can go outside and reconnect with nature, reconnect with friends, or creating the ability to cycle to school to relieve that burden from carers that they have to be there all the time, and thinking about social safety as well. So, where are we making sure that woman, man, or other, when they're moving through a city, they don't have that fear of safety all the time, or fear of harassment, or fear of abuse.
And how do women move differently in a city?
Yeah, great question. It comes back again to that idea of care. Is a lot of women are moving with others that they're responsible for, whether that's children or other dependents, or doing that sort of care work. They're moving differently. If you're moving with a small child, as Diane has already, exemplified in her example earlier, you have to think, how is this small child going to move at this crossing? And how do I make sure that they can get to the playground? Or how do I make sure that this curb height's not too high that they're going to have to really jump up or down to get off of? What does it look like to move around on a bicycle with a child? How do we create, that comfort so that when we have to dismount, it's not this massive, laborious activity? One thing is we tend to go directly, especially me because I am a mom, we go directly to that mom role in terms of how women move. But we have a different awareness of the city when we move around. We know that we have to be vigilant. We have to know who's moving around us. We have to worry, who is this person that's passing by me? There's anecdotes around the world of women walking with their keys between their knuckles, because that's what we're all taught. This is the first defense mechanism I can have. Don't yell help, yell fire, all these things. And that impacts how we move. It makes the choice of which streets we go down, which transportation options we choose, which times of day we choose to leave the house. It might not seem like much at first, but when you think about all the limitations that begins to create for women, that's important in terms of how we move, how we access school, jobs, health services, social opportunities. And it needs to be part of the planning process. And so that segues into why this book was important for us, is to elevate the role of women in leadership, because we design, we plan, we create policies, we advocate based on our experiences. And if we don't have women at the table in all of those realms, we're missing out on their experiences to help inform what we do.
I think that a lot of things with women, it's their responsibility, right? Like, there is a feminine experience when you're walking through the world, and there are different experiences for women with children and caring. And it's so vital for women to stand up and say, hey, it's really difficult for me to travel to the grocery store with my baby. They're screaming in the back of the car. How can we fix that? How can we build an environment where both parties aren't so stressed? And children are just almost always kind of connected to mothers in the same way. We need that feminine viewpoint.
Yeah. Thanks, Diane. And I think also we talk about women as this homogenous group when we're designing for them, but women can be young, they can be old, they can have children, they cannot, they can have a disability, they can be high income, low income. And so we need to understand all those nuances. It's not just designed for women, but designed for all these aspects of various women's lives.
Yeah, it's beautifully said.
I'm particularly interested in who makes decisions, as you say, who has power, and why we have gotten to where we are, and how that can be due to the fact that the people that did work for cities and that did take responsibility for designing, for example, car-centric infrastructure aren't people that were necessarily looking after kids or doing multi-stop journeys to pick up shopping or visit medical facilities with children in tow. I mean, I remember when I had 2 young children and lived in Singapore, I noticed pretty quickly how many stairs there were, and it made me have more understanding of the experience perhaps of people with mobility issues. And, you know, I do read a lot about how when we design a city that's accessible for disabled people, that it's better for everybody. Have you found that as well? Is that something that you focused on in your work?
We wrote a chapter about that in Curbing Traffic in terms of the experience of people with disabilities. So there's a webinar series I did for an organization called Women Mobilize Women. They're funded through the German Development Agency and specifically focused on facilitating and enabling a larger network of women working in the transport sector, particularly in the global south, but also with intersection with the global north as well. And we did an episode on the intersectional experience of women with disabilities. And that was the core message out of that. We spoke to Anna Sieverts, who is low vision. And we also spoke to Kay Inkel, who works for Wheels for Wellbeing. They're an advocacy organization in the UK. And both of them said, you know, if we're not designing for all of these potential disabilities, we're designing ourselves out of the system. And so it can't just be focused, like I was saying, on 25 to 60-year-old man who is working and therefore driving to work or taking the bus if you happen to live in a city where public transportation is a viable option. It has to be also thinking about, you know, what happens if I get injured, or what happens if suddenly I become disabled and this is my experience. We need to be designing for that as well. If you design for all the various impairments we could experience, then we are essentially designing for everyone. And we hear the same thing if it's about designing for kids. If you're designing for a 2-year-old, you're designing for an 80-year-old. You're making life easier for both of them. So I think and again, we hear the same thing about women, but then it comes back to this role of care as well, as women are more involved in the caring of all of those groups. I think we can benefit from all aspects of it, but if we're going to talk about how to make inclusive cities, then we need to be considering all the people that move, but particularly those that are the least served by what we've been doing so far.
Yeah, and I was super interested to hear Diane's anecdote about losing sight of her little kid for just a couple of seconds, but then being blamed for her child doing something that naturally children do, which is to just shoot off without having the benefit of years of experience of the dangers. I always lament that we do constantly victim blame and avoid putting responsibility, turn ourselves in knots not to put responsibility on car manufacturers, drivers, the government decision makers that prioritise the convenience and movement of vehicles over every other thing. And it does end up trapping anyone who's caring for kids, because you have to be so vigilant that it blows my mind when we have public education campaigns where governments and police organisations purport to build awareness of the dangers of the road when we start teaching our children about the dangers of roads before they can even talk.
We wrote about it in the first book in Building the Cycling City about child education or traffic safety education in the Netherlands, but we got to experience it firsthand with our youngest because it happens in primary school and he got just enough time. But it was interesting for us to see what they were learning. They're very much learning, you know, how to navigate on foot and what things, like what signs you need to be looking for. They're teaching them all of those things from the very first year of primary school for an age appropriate, you know. So it starts with walking and then it goes to cycling, and then you have your cycling exam, which is such a fascinating time of year. You see all the cycle exam signs go up and you see all the kids riding around with their yellow vests. And so you have that in the child perspective. But on the flip side, I've actually, for reasons I'm happy to get into, but I have to get my driver's license again. I couldn't swap. So now I'm doing the process again. And on the driver education side, there's I think 60 or 70 different signs, which arguably is probably too many for traffic situations. But there's so much burden put on drivers to know what speed I do in which neighborhood and what certain elements mean. in terms of when I can turn and when I can't, and where's my responsibility. And so the drivers are being taught that just as much, to put that burden of responsibility back on the people that are moving the vehicle that can cause the most damage. And knowing that if you see a pedestrian and they can't see you, you don't have the right of way anymore. For example, if you're turning right and they're crossing the street, the burden of responsibility is not on that pedestrian to turn over their shoulder and see if you're there. It's on you, that you're the one in the car and they can't see you, so you wait. It's interesting to see that from both sides of the kids having this active learning, but then also the drivers understanding their role in this in terms of not just interacting with other vehicles, but interacting with I hate to use the word vulnerable, but the people that are not in the car moving around.
How do you feel that the different levels of government in the Netherlands are accepting their responsibility for road design and for vehicle regulations? I suppose it's intertwined with the European Union regulations pretty much, but does that influence things enough in the right way?
There's pros and cons everywhere. There's always ways that they're doing better and ways that there's room for improvement, especially as our mobilities keep changing. So right now, the big conversation is around how modes mix. We have a lot more in terms of e-bikes or throttle e-bikes, fat tire bikes. It's a huge conversation in the Netherlands, and where do all those modes fit together? But because of the adoption of sustainable safety in the 90s that is specifically focused on things like comfort, safety, cohesion, how do you make it attractive for people? These are sort of ingrained now in the way that designers and civic leaders approach transformations in cities. I think what's really interesting right now is you see a lot of cities not necessarily seeing that cycling is done. Cycling is never done. If you spend any amount of time, like length of time in the Netherlands, you'll see that what you think is perfect from a North American standpoint, they will change again next year because they've realized it's not safe enough. It's creating too many conflicts. How do we make it better? But you're seeing this shift now to look at, it's not just about cycling, but it's also about walking, and it's about replenishing green in cities. And so for me, that's a really interesting thing to watch, is to understand cycling the Dutch are seen as cyclists. Like that's just like their identity everywhere else around the world. But within the Netherlands, we're also walking. We're also spending time outside. We're also experiencing extreme heat. How are we building shade back in? How are we addressing drought? I think it's interesting to see that shift and understanding that it's not like job done. We've covered cycling. We're doing better than everyone else. Let's just do on.
I'm just laughing. I'm laughing while I'm listening to you, because I went to visit my brother and his family in Amsterdam, where they live, last summer, and I was lucky enough to get quite extensive cycling tours of Amsterdam from my grown-up adult nephews.
Nice.
And we were riding along a separated bike path along a busy road, and he did make that remark. He's very critical. He's saying, well, you can see that this wasn't designed with cyclist convenience in mind. And I'm like, well, if this was anywhere in North America or Australia, you'd be thinking, wow, this is fantastic. But obviously standards are higher, and you're right, you can always do better and improve things. Am I right in thinking that when roads are rebuilt every 50 years or so, they just put in whatever the latest standard is for safety when that's done, as a matter of course, without too much controversy?
Pretty much. Usually if there's a road redesign, it'll be to whatever the latest standards are. So in a neighborhood, that will be, streets that would have just been like what we would think of as a standard European street, still fairly narrow, but having, the pavers, but all at one level. They will change them to then raise the crossing, so they become more of that environment that we talked about in curbing traffic and in building the cycling city, this continuous sidewalk, continuous footpath, looking at the cycling infrastructure. Is it wide enough for latest standards? No. Okay, now we make it wider. Where do we use design to adjust the speeds to the level that we need it to be now based on today's standards? I think the key thing is, you said 50 years. That's not how frequently or how long it takes for change to happen. I mean, in the area where we live, the intersection that I go through almost every single day by bike, that's changed twice in the 7 years that we've lived there.
Wow,
because they've noticed
cool.
It's not good enough. It's just being aware of what is the latest and how do we use the opportunity of fixing pipes or putting in new fiber optic cables to improve the street. Yeah.
Well, this has been so fascinating, and I can't wait to take the opportunity to speak to you more about this in Vancouver face-to-face for the first time this week. Thank you so much, Diane and Melissa.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That was Lucy Maloney, Melissa Bruntlett, and Diane Alisa. And again, Lucy was such a host to me when I was up in Vancouver. She lent me her husband's rain gear and her Brompton bike, and she toured me all around the new bicycle infrastructure in Vancouver. So it was really a wonderful opportunity to spend some time with Lucy and to see all the great stuff that's going on in Vancouver. So it was nice to hear her and Melissa and Diane having a chance to chat.
And now you have something you did with someone from Adventure Cycling, right?
Yeah. We've talked on the show a lot about bike touring. We've interviewed a couple of people who have ridden their bikes all the way across the country, different ways of seeing cities, on a bike and things like that. Nick and I talked a while back about Nick doing a bike packing trip and me doing a longer bike touring trip. And I've got this thing in my craw that I want to do another long distance trip. I've done a couple week-long trips on my bike, one solo and one with my brother, but I want to do a long one by myself. And so I reached out to Adventure Cycling, which is an amazing organization that helps you explore, plan, ride, and support whatever kind of bike trip you want to do, whether it's with a guide or on your own or with a group. And Josh Bowden is their experiences and operations specialist at Adventure Cycling. And he's going to walk us through this idea of how do we plan for a long distance bike trip. So Josh, thanks for coming on and welcome to Bike Talk.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is really great. I love getting more people on bikes and doing adventures, so this is perfect.
Well, before we get going, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your own experiences there, but also Adventure Cycling Association.
Yeah, so Adventure Cycling Association has been around for a little bit. We actually started as Bicentennial, which was named after the bicentennial here in America, where they planned a coast-to-coast ride. That was a big group organization. And it's grown from there to now we have published over 50,000 miles of bike routes. We do guided bike trips, which is what I work in with the association. And we do a lot of advocacy as well, like played a role in Amtrak, having more bike check-ons when you get on the trains there.
Yeah.
So we've got our hands in that. And we're 49 years old as of this year. Next year's the 50th anniversary. And I guess it's important to mention that we're a nonprofit, so it's not like a for-profit business. We do a lot of different things in the bike world.
Yeah, I just joined, and I think I paid $60 maybe for a membership, and I don't even think that was the highest level. I think there are higher levels, but I'm on a budget because Bike Talk doesn't pay that much money. But tell us about yourself. How did you get involved in adventure cycling, and what kind of adventure cycling do you do?
Yeah, so like really backing up, I've always been interested in adventure travel, long distance travel. I came into it through long distance backpacking, things like Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, like that's where I got drawn in. So translating that into bikes was a pretty easy transfer. You just get on a bike, you add a couple different bags, but the gear and ideas fairly similar. And when I first got into it, I was aware of adventure cycling, and that was the first place I went to look at what are the options of routes, where can I go? The first real big trip I did, I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, which is the northern terminus of the Natchez Trace Parkway, which is a 400+ mile roadway. So that was my first bike packing trip or bike tour. They're kind of interchangeable words. And, adventure cycling has routes on that. And I got information about how to do that through them. So they were on the radar. And now I'm lucky enough to have been working here with adventure cycling for the last year or so.
Right. And when you say here, you mean Montana. Is it Missoula?
Yeah, we're based in Missoula, Montana. Have been here for, as long as I can remember. And if you look at our routes, a lot of routes will go significantly out of their way to go to Missoula so that people can come visit the office along their bike ride. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, I want to do a ride from San Francisco to Michigan. My daughters live in San Francisco, and my father, who just turned 101, lives in Michigan. And
Wow.
I want to connect those two. And, I don't have the desire to climb Mount Everest, or I don't have to go from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. I don't have that kind of goal, but I do want to do a long trip, longer than a week, a month or a month and a half or something like that. So that's why I joined Adventure Cycling, to kind of help me with that. I interviewed a man who rode his bike all the way across the country, and he said he rode from his daughters in Los Angeles to his son on the East Coast. And when I asked him at the end of the interview if he would do it again, he said not on the same route, that it was a very difficult route, a lot of traffic. And that's partly what I'm hoping you can help me with, is finding a route. I don't mind riding with cars, and I think a lot of experienced cyclists don't mind riding with cars, but I also love riding without cars. And so I wonder, how would you help someone in my position plan for a trip like this, from, say, it doesn't have to be San Francisco to Michigan, it can be any long distance, but what are the bullet points that you would advise someone to check off their list before they start a trip like this?
Yeah, you are already on a great path, I would say, when I've helped people think about trips. And you've answered that first question of like, you've found your reason of like what you want to do with your trip. What do you want out of it? Like, the reason being you want to visit your family. You have two destinations to go between. You have your time frame. So that helps you shape all of your other decisions. Like there's an objective in place that gives you a motivation, because every long distance trip, backpacking, a bike trip, it gets hard. There's times
Right.
where you're just, I'm sick of this. I kind of want to go home. But now you have that reason, something to sustain you when you're not feeling incredibly excited out there when the exhaustion sets in.
Right.
So you've already found a lot of those, I would say, very important aspects of that, is that reason. There's two general avenues I think of. Do you want an adventure that's defined by like adventure, solitude, maybe getting in the wilderness, or do you want something that's more about the culture, the sightseeing, the travel, and that kind of shapes your different options there. And then again, you've already answered like, what do you hope to get out of this tour? You've already kind of thought about like that sustaining reason of what does it feel like to complete the tour? It would
Right.
feel like visiting, connecting these two pieces of your family. There's an accomplishment there. You're going to get a bit of a culture experience, a bit of a solo experience, but also putting two pieces together. You're on a great path already. You've
Oh,
answered a
okay.
lot of the easy questions out the gate.
Good. I was going to say, sometimes those could even be hard questions. Why do you want to do it? Because I've been thinking
Yeah.
about that. Why do I need to do it? Do I need to prove something to myself? You know?
hmm
So,
Yeah, it's really important to address that so you're not out there struggling with those feelings when you're there. Because if like, am I proving something to myself, which can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. It just depends on where you're at and what that means.
right.
And yeah, you could think of like, why would I ride my bike a month and a half when I could buy a plane ticket and just go see these people in a week? So when there's all these other options out there, you do need to figure out like, why is it that I'm attracted to this mode of travel, and like dedicating especially the amount of time. So yeah, why am I going to put my life on hold for a month and a half and do this?
Right.
And if you don't have to answer that question, when things get hard, it it can be tough. It can be a really tough moment to reconcile with that while you're out there.
Yeah. I would like to camp a good
hmm
portion of the time. And how does that complicate or change or simplify the trip?
I think that actually makes it more simple. That opens up a lot of options. I've done trips where that have been like that, where it's mostly camping. And, if I get to a town, I'll stay in a hotel so I can have a bit of a break, watch some TV, shower, clean up. I've done trips where I've only stayed in hotels the whole time. And that kind of locks in your itinerary, because let's say there's 100 miles between towns and like hotels. If you can camp somewhere in between, all of a sudden that's a lot more easy to stomach versus like, wow, I have to ride 100 miles because there's no other option.
Right.
So if you're willing to camp, and occasionally you will want to stay in a hotel at some point,
Sure.
that's part
Sure.
of it because you need a bit of a reset. That makes your options and logistics much, much easier, because now you have all the supplies you need to sleep wherever you pretty much want. You can eat wherever you want. Like it makes, I think, logistics much easier. It adds on gear and a bit of weight, but the benefits of it, I think, outweigh any of the other costs for sure.
Oh, okay, good. So you think that's a reasonable choice then?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say most time people doing a long trip like yours, it's primarily camping, mostly because it's way less expensive than staying in a
Right.
hotel every day. It's a cost-saving thing, and if you're into that kind of travel, there's a good chance you enjoy camping. You
Yeah.
enjoy the simplicity of it.
I do enjoy camping, and I've done a fair amount of it. And I got to tell you, as crazy as this sounds, occasionally when I camp by myself, I get kind of freaked out. I get kind of scared. Um,
Yeah.
um, is that normal? I interviewed a woman who rode across the country on the southern border, and she camped by herself all the time. No one was around, and I was thinking I'd be a little scared to do some of that. So is that a
Yeah.
common thing that you hear people deal with, or do they get used to it quickly?
Yeah, I think it's something to deal with. It's something I deal with. If I haven't camped in a long time, sometimes it takes a lot of motivation for me to work up that energy to go by myself, even though camping is one of my favorite things to do. Backpacking, bikepacking into remote locations usually is my thing that I enjoy. You should think about it for sure. In the same way of like, you need to think about your reason, you think about like, what are the aspects along it I want to do? Because if you realize like, man, camping by myself, not my forte. So maybe then that helps you decide like, okay, if I'm going to camp, I want to camp in like an RV park that allows tent camping because then
Right,
there's people around.
right.
I want to stay in designated campsites versus my personal preference is I like to kind of sneak into a public land and just camp in a random spot, and
Yeah.
when I leave the next morning, no one knows I've
No,
been
no
there.
sign, right.
No sign. Yeah, I could leave no trace type of camping. So it's definitely a pretty common thing to sort out. I would say a lot of people get used to it along the way just because there's a chance you'll end up by yourself. If you're aware of that and you've prepared ahead of time thinking like I might camp by myself, you can come prepared with strategies of just like, I'm going to make sure I have a good book. I'm going to, if I can, I'm going to call a family member or a friend and just chat for a little bit. Like I'll do
Right.
that way out in the wilderness. If I have
Sure.
cell signal, I might call a friend just to feel a little bit better. You can come in ready with some tools and strategies to not necessarily negate the solitude of it, but to warm up to it.
Right, right,
Baby steps into it. You don't have to become a hardcore solo camper
right.
on your first day.
Yeah, I often journal when I camp by
Mm.
myself, and so that kind of helps me through those uncomfortable feelings. Well, I had asked you to come up with 6 or so bullet points of planning a trip like this, and my thought is we would meet every week or every other week for the next 5 or 6 weeks and take me and our audience through planning a trip like this. And it seems like we got number one, which was your bullet point number one, picking a route and a reason. And I'm going to read off the other things that you wrote. Well, why don't you read them?
Yeah. So today, first one is I actually wrote it as picking a route and a reason. It should be picking a reason and a route because I think the reason is the most important
Sure.
thing. Like if you
Yeah.
don't know why you're doing it, you got to figure that out before you go. And I know that from personal experience, having gone on trips and not really thought through deeply, why am I doing this? And
Right.
had a hard time. So picking a reason and a route, first thing you need to do. Then you need to think about logistics and planning. Things we're mentioning of like, am I camping or hotel to hotel? Like, how do I even get to the start of my trip if it's not out of your front door? Things
Right.
like that. Third thing would be setting up your life and the finances for your ride. If you're going to leave your everyday life for a month and a half or 5 months or a year, you have to think about all the aspects of like what that's going to look
Yeah,
like.
who's going to
with your
water
home
the plants and
situation.
feed the dog, right?
Yeah. Who's going to do that? Like, if you're
Pay the
renting, do I
bills,
just
yeah.
let my rental go? Do I just have
Yeah.
no home while I do this? Fourth topic would be getting your bike together and your repair kit. Because even if you're not mechanically minded, you need to have at least a couple of basic tools to get you out of a tight bind, to get you to the next bike shop.
Okay.
And whatever kind of bike you have or want to get will also affect your trip. Next is gear and clothing, making sure you have what you need. You're anticipating the kind of weather you'll come across along the way. Answer questions kind of like, how many clothes do I need? How do I need 2 pairs of chamois shorts? Do I need 4? What do I
Right.
need? How do you think about this? And last would be like physically preparing for your tour. A lot of people have a mindset of, I'll get fit as I go. As I start, I'll go slow and pick your way up. I'm a believer in if you're interested in a bike tour, you probably like riding your bike in your day-to-day life.
Right.
So if we do some preparation ahead of time, you don't have to warm up into the trip. You can start feeling strong and ready. And also, as anyone has ridden a bike for any amount of time knows, you got to make sure that your butt's comfortable in that saddle, because if it's not, you're in for a bad time.
And then the last bullet point you put on that was a Q&A. And so I really want to open it up to our audience. If you have any questions for Josh and for Adventure Cycling, either about the topic that we're discussing this week, or, next week we'll talk a little bit more about planning the ride and the logistics of planning that ride. Like, how do I get out of San Francisco? Which route do I take? And one of the great things about Adventure Cycling is you guys have, I looked on your map, you have all these great maps. I'm really interested in the Lewis and Clark Trail and part of that route. I read that book, Undaunted Courage, by Stephen Ambrose, and about Lewis and Clark. And, just a great book. And I'd love to see some of the country that those guys saw a mere 220 years ago. So if you have any feedback or questions for Josh, please send them to livebiketalk@gmail.com, or you can go to our website, biketalk.org, and you can leave us a message there also. Josh Bowden, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and help me with this trip. Not only me, but our audience, hopefully planning their trip. And any last words, Josh?
Yeah, well, again, just appreciate you having me on. It's nice to talk through your trip to let people have an understanding of not just bullet points that we're talking about and ideas, but like now they have an example of going through the process alongside you to do that. Like you mentioned, Adventure Cycling, we're a nonprofit, and we have a bunch of resources for people looking to get into a bike trip or design their own.
Great. Well, again, if you have any questions for Josh, please let us know at biketalk.org or livebiketalk@gmail.com, and we will try to answer them on the air. And we'll have Josh back on in, I think, next week, but maybe a week after next. It kind of depends on how we space these out. And we'll get a little bit more into the planning, the ride, and the route. Josh Bowden, thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. Appreciate it.
So that was Josh Bowden of Adventure Cycling. And again, next week we'll have him on, and we'll talk about, the more logistical aspect of planning the ride. What is the actual route? When do you go? Where do you stop? Do you camp? Stuff like that. So I want to thank Josh. We like to support bicycle entrepreneurs. Rio Ramsey from Detroit is a pedicab biker. And I was hiking in the canyon recently, and I came out of the canyon, and I saw a guy with a cargo bike, and he was a barista. And it's called Satellite Cafe, and he makes some really wonderful coffee right on his e-cargo bike. So I talked to him a little bit about it, and here's that. So I just got done walking my dog in Runyon Canyon, a famous dog walking spot in Los Angeles, and I come across a guy selling coffee on an e-trike. It's fantastic looking. Hey, Adrian, what's your business?
Satellite Cafe.
Satellite Cafe, meaning you move around because you're on a bike.
Exactly.
What got you started in this?
I've been working in coffee for a little over 15 years. I had a shop before the pandemic in Colombia, and I'm from Seattle originally. And in Seattle, we have these things all over the place. Sure. So it was something that I've been thinking about for quite a while. And then traveling around the world, I just saw them everywhere. And then when the pandemic hit, we were all in lockdown. I was trying to figure out what can I do that I could do from home or from close to home.
Right.
And this was just like the natural progression for me to go from what I've done before to doing this now.
Great. So are you more of a biker or more of a coffee guy, or both?
I'm a little bit of both. I have a bike at home as well that I like to ride around town.
Right. And how did you set the bike up? It looks like a pretty great bike. It's an e-bike.
It is, yeah. So I went through this company called Furla, and they do the custom build. So you basically tell them, what you're looking to do, and then based on what you want, they'll build out the bike for you. Also, because I got it during the pandemic, it took quite a while to get it because I think a lot of their parts came from different parts of the world.
Right.
So once the bike was ready to be built and put together, it sat on a boat for months.
Oh, yeah.
And then once I finally got it, then I just did my own custom build. Like I put in the sink. I'm about to put in a pump system just to start doing water and things like that. I have a battery here on the side. I'm going to place that inside, put the solar on top just to be able to power my machines. And yeah, just kind of add as I go.
Right.
You know?
And we're on a pretty steep hill here. So you need an e-bike to get this up the hill.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that if you're on it, you really got to pedal and give it some push. But I could easily jump off of it and use the e-bike, and it'll just coast right up the hill.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, this is Adrian at Satellite Cafe, and I highly recommend if you see him, stop and get a coffee and say hey.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah.
That was the Satellite Cafe right outside Runyon Canyon in Los Angeles, California.
All right. Good show. Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah. Don't forget to go to our website, biketalk.org, and take our listener survey or look for our Instagram posts or Facebook posts and find the survey. It's a short survey. It's kind of fun, and it'll really help us tailor the show to our audience's, desires, Nick? What would you say?
I don't know. I'm still back with Taylor the show. No pun. We'll look and see who people are who listen. We put it out and we don't always know who gets it.
Right.
Thanks.
We want to thank our guests, Rick Rosales, Captain Jack Sharrow. We want to thank Diane Alisa, Melissa Bruntlett, and Lucy Maloney. We want to thank Josh Bowden. And we want to thank our regulars, Julie Richard, Charlie Lighthizer, Amy Ziering, Lindsay Sturman, Stacy Randecker, Josh Hagland, and Kevin Burton.
Great. Bike quote?
Our bike quote is, go take our listener survey.
Oh, man. That's
a bike plug. Yeah.
And plug is one of the things that isn't part of a bike. I was trying to think of if that was a double.
Well, maybe on the naked bike ride.
Oh, man. You go there.
Ride safe.
This episode of Bike Talk is sponsored by the law offices of Pocras and De Los Reyes, with offices in Los Angeles and Bakersfield and serving all of Southern California.
Bike Talk is a project of CRSP and the Los Angeles Eco-Village Institute.
And that was Bike Talk. If you have a story, a tip, or a topic, head over to biketalk.org and send us a message. Talk again next week.
Get on your bike, sit on the seat, put your feet on the pedal, and run all around, run all around. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, put your feet on the pedal, and run all around, run all around. Get that car out of my way, I wanna ride my bike today. Keep me fit, get me there, I won't go stinking up the alley behind the daily grind. Let your mind unwind, give us life, pretend to life, better get yourself a bike. Got yourself a bike. Oh, 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 got yourself a bike.